This relationship gave us motifs, dive bars and pubs in London and the Lakes District and Cornelia Street. It's the setting of the story and the color blue, and I know firsthand there is a lot in this world to be sad over. But I give you permission to feel sad about this story ending. I don't think it's any different over people who are sad over books or movies. You cannot tell me we are not allowed to feel sad over a relationship that literally gave us motifs. What other celebrity breakup can you say that about? Hey everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. I like to post about books and music, mostly Taylor Swift. This shirt is very, very fitting, not only for my channel, but kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm just going to try to get right into this because this video has the potential to be podcast episode length. I will have timestamps down below if you are interested in specific topics. It's been a very surreal week. I'm sure we've all seen the news by this point that Taylor Swift and Joe Alwyn have broken up. Some of you guys have messaged me asking, is this actually true? It was confirmed by People magazine, which has a great relationship with Taylor Swift. I believe they're the ones who broke the news about her Calvin breakup back in the day. CNN has now picked it up. If you are unaware, like, this isn't just like tabloids running crazy rumors. This is all but confirmed. I don't think we're ever gonna get an actual confirmation, but yeah, it happened, and I think we should talk about it. I've already seen lots of commentary over this online, so what I wanted to do is bring something kind of new to the table. Some of you guys expressed interest in me posting about this, and I just wanted to take kind of a different angle. Basically, why I think it's okay to feel sad by this within reason is that this very much felt like a book. I think my t-shirt that I just got a few days ago actually is a perfect visual representation of what this feels like and why I have been sad and why I think a lot of other people have been sad. Of course, the characters in these 10 books are based on real human beings, but there are so many characters in the Taylor Swift cinematic universe, after all, that are fictional or loosely based off of people or very heavily inspired by people. All of these people, even Taylor herself, who I think portrays herself as she sees her, so I think she is an idealized version of herself in the songs. She is who she wants to be in her songs. It's obviously a very biased perspective. They're all just characters in the Taylor Swift cinematic universe, after all, is what I'm getting at. Karma is a character. Karma takes the place of the boyfriend, which I think the boyfriend in and of itself is its own character in the TSCU. Whoever kind of fills that placeholder for whatever amount of time doesn't necessarily matter. It's just that over the last, like 15 years, the boyfriend has just been a huge focal point of a lot of the songs. I think people give her shit for that, but I think it's just a part of this narrative that she's been crafting in her own universe since her debut album. No matter who the boyfriend is, that is a character. Karma is sometimes the boyfriend. There are characters that are 100% fictional. Potential fictional characters with their own names that are separate from the people who I think they are kind of loosely based on. For example, I think Dorothea is very loosely based on Selena Gomez in the sweetest way. This has been the one relationship, I think, in Taylor's entire career that most of the information we got from it was a romanticized, biased perspective coming from Taylor herself as a narrator, as a poet, and that spanned 5 albums, which essentially is like 5 books. So if we're thinking of her discography as a series, which I am heavily going to be doing in this video, that's half of it that was either inspired or influenced in some way by this person in her life who also took the form of kind of a fictional character seen only through Taylor's eyes. I mean, that's all of this, and definitely all of the songs in these 5 albums are not about Joe, but I think he definitely influenced her worldview for half of her discography. I hope I'm making sense. I have a very loose script off camera right now. I don't think we should be theorizing quite how we would if we were coming to the end of a book series. Not really the end, because there will be more albums, more books. But after it happened, I genuinely just felt like I read the last chapter in the Midnight's book, and now I'm waiting for the next installment, and the couple that had been together for 5 books ended up breaking up, and that's how that storyline ends, and now we're just on to something new. It's a very strange feeling to verbalize. I'm so glad I have this shirt. But yeah, even though I will largely be talking about this as a story, I don't think we should be getting as unhinged with our theories as we were for the truly fictional characters in the Taylor Swift cinematic universe, such as Betty, James, and Augustine. We need to be respectful. I'm not about to get out my whiteboard again and go just full unhinged, as I did for my Does Betty Take James Back video, because these are real people. That's just one of my ways of being respectful. I won't even make jokes about one person or the other being terrible, like I lightheartedly called James a steaming pile of shit in that video from almost 3 years ago now, because James is not real. But Taylor and Joe are very much heavily based on real people. They deserve respect and to be treated as humans. I'd like to briefly go into detail for what I mean when I say respect, because I know I have some younger Swifties watching me. I feel like it's a vague request to just be like, guys, be respectful, and not actually elaborate on what that means. Do not accuse one or the other of cheating. I think people who are doing this aren't really trying to connect and have a discussion about what they thought concerning storylines and everything. I feel like these people are probably just trying to get views anyways, but I really don't want any of that in the comment section. This isn't James and Betty, like, please don't be outlandish. Please, let's not tag them in videos discussing their breakup. Trying to get their attention is also not cute. Obviously, no unaliving threats. I feel like this should go without saying. We don't know the full story. We potentially never will. If we do get kind of a full story / conclusion from Taylor through her music, as I said before, it is a very biased perspective. Like, I think it's just for us to cope, for us if we're potentially going through something similar. I don't think we need to take everything as absolute fact that Taylor narrates in her lyrics. I think if she does kind of give us closure on this in her next album, we need to just take it with a grain of salt and know that Joe cannot give his side in the same way. We don't know the full story, we only know the lyrical story. I've always been really good about divorcing the guys she dates from the guys in the songs, especially as time goes on. For example, Jake Gyllenhaal and All Too Well Red Scarf Jake are two very separate people at this point. Like, one is very much a character. Like, we even have an actor. He's portrayed by Dylan O'Brien in the short film. I don't think the actual Jake Gyllenhaal has anything to do with this. I think the version of him that exists in Taylor's work is, first of all, frozen in time. It's him from like over 10 years ago. The way they're kind of memorialized and frozen in these songs is so unhuman-like to me at this point that I think, especially with time, I will very much be divorcing Joe from the idea of the Joe that she was writing about, if that makes sense. Joe is still very fairly and positively portrayed in this narrative because we haven't yet got material out of what transpired in the last few months, but I still think he has nothing to do with the real Joe Alwyn. Are you following me? It's inherently going to be unfair, even if it's a positive portrayal, because it's all Taylor's perspective and mind. And I'm not necessarily interested in hearing their side or viewing the actual people as anything other than layered and multifaceted and flawed people on their own who go on to grow outside of the interactions they had with Taylor. The people I don't really have an opinion on, but the written out muses that exist in the songs, let's discuss. I feel like I just really have to stress that even though we are talking about characters in this video and in a lot of the discourse that I see online, they are based on real people, and the things you think they may not see because you are not humanizing them in your own mind, they absolutely have the potential to see it. We're all on the internet. It's kind of all an even playing ground. They could see the first notification that pops up when they go on social media, and it could conveniently be something that you were tagging them in. Some of this shit has consequences for their careers and personal lives. And lastly, be respectful to other Swifties. If it was truly none of our business, Taylor's rep would not have confided in People magazine. I think she wanted to give us some kind of update. Lauren Littman has a fantastic video about the relationship that People magazine has with Taylor in relation to the breakup. It's a great video to get more info on the reports of this. I believe she's a journalist. She has a really good timeline going on. She's very kind, and I just love her vibes in the video. I will be focusing more on an artistic analysis since I haven't seen that done too much and I want to bring something new to the table, to the conversation. She could have just not revealed this information. Like, Taylor has given us snippets of this relationship. She told people at the Reputation Secret sessions that any love song she writes would be about her lovely new boyfriend, and they can go tell everyone as such. She invited us in to an extent, and I think a certain amount of respectful discussion is fine. Now I'm going to briefly talk about parasocial relationships just like a little bit. I did some very surface level research because I've seen this mentioned a ton, especially from people who aren't Swifties and think we are insane for even talking about this. Not all parasocial relationships are bad. There are layers to parasocial relationships, and kind of the most surface level one where you're just using it as kind of entertainment or you're using it to socialize within a fandom. It can be very productive. Also, it could lead to some self-reflection if you see yourself within this person. I've created real mutual relationships with other people who also love Taylor Swift through my own, I guess, parasocial relationship with Taylor. I talk about her to connect with others, to connect with you guys on my channel. If you're following a celebrity who has guided you through some shit, who may even be a little bit older and shares their life experiences, it can definitely be a very productive and inspiring hobby. You can gain insight into yourself. Where it gets tricky is if you start to feel like you have some kind of special relationship that other fans don't. Even though I have been here since I was 8 years old, I have no access to any information that the rest of the public doesn't. I'm not special and she does not know who I am. Thinking you're special or that it's a mutual relationship is where things can veer into stalking and unhealthy behavior and fixations, or prioritizing your parasocial relationship over your real life mutual relationships. So that's just me putting it out there because I've seen so much judgment. I think it's normal to just respectfully discuss this in a social setting. I think we're all kind of connecting with each other through this. Okay, now I want to bring some other discussions that I've seen online to the table, kind of show you some really interesting perspectives that I've seen, and if I have anything to add, I will do so. So my huge inspiration for making this video, first of all, I did feel deeply, right when I heard about this, that I had just finished a book and just felt very emotional by what had happened in the storyline. And then I came across this video on TikTok that really put this feeling into words very succinctly. I'm not sure if I can get copyright claimed for putting someone else's video in here. I guess technically I could because it's not my content. I'm just gonna put the handle up here to credit this person and then I'm going to quote her. Here's why you're not crazy if you're mourning a celebrity's breakup. The celebrity in particular here is Taylor Swift. A lot of people are saying, ew, gross, don't cry about her breakup. You didn't know her, you're not a part of it. And that's true. We don't know her, we're not a part of it. But what we do know and what we have been invited to be a part of is the stories of her songs. Any Taylor Swift fan can tell you that her songs are not your usual pop songs. They're elevated by the lyricism, by her storytelling in particular. And she's given us 5 albums that include songs about this relationship, and that as a result has sort of turned Taylor Swift and Joe Alwyn into characters within the stories. And we don't know how close the Joe and Taylor of the songs is to the Joe and Taylor in real life, and that's not for us to know. But to me, the quality of her songs makes them basically literature, and so this is the same again to me as reading a book, or reading 5 books about 2 characters whose love story you became so invested in, and who you care about, and seeing them break apart is devastating, and it's okay to feel that way. The same way you would cry at the end of a movie, or cry at the end of a really sad book. Some people are actually leaving flowers at Taylor's old apartment on Cornelia Street because of her song Cornelia Street, and people might be thinking that's going way too far, and maybe it is, but oh my god, there's also something so beautiful in that people are mourning these characters that they've known and loved for 4 years, however long it's been since that album came out. That's what her music does to us. It makes us feel that deeply, and that just reflects back on how great she is as an artist. So if you're upset about this breakup, if it hurts, that's okay. Don't let people tell you that you're crazy. Don't go tagging Taylor Swift in videos about it, but don't let people make you think that you're crazy. You listened to a love story over 5 albums, and now it's ending. And that's just sad. So I think the criticism of Swifties that kind of has a little bit of a leg to stand on is that we don't know how close the Joe and Taylor in these songs that we've grown to love is to the actual Joe and Taylor who have just broken up. So I think there is a little bit of delusion and that we're grieving something that isn't really real. The only knowledge we really knew of this couple, because they were so private, was all what Taylor narrated in her songs. I think that's what made us so attached to it, because it was just so romanticized. Like, we saw it completely through her eyes without really a whole lot of media influence, because our first-hand view of this was through her lyrics. It was just so romanticized. But if we're crying over the version of Joe and Taylor that aren't very accurate to who they really are, then we really are crying over characters, and I don't think we have a reason to really be judged for that. It just feels so much like a book. And then she talks about the Cornelia Street thing. Even Duolingo posted the Duolingo owl went to Cornelia Street to pay his respects. What timeline are we living in? That was surreal. I think there is something beautiful in that, but I also think I am not the best person to ask if that's a beautiful or respectful thing, because I think in the grand scheme of things, we as Swifties have done much worse to Taylor Swift's exes. And I think leaving flowers at an apartment that neither of them even live at anymore is probably about as, what's the opposite of unhinged? Hinged and respectful as it gets when something like this happens. when Taylor breaks up with somebody. When you think about not just super fans, but people who I wouldn't even consider fans, who are literally just kind of a threat to Taylor's existence, showing up to houses she actively still lives in and shouting things to her about Joe whenever she emerges from the residence, that is very beyond fucked up. I don't think that's beautiful or touching in any way. But I don't know, going to Cornelia Street and just kind of feeling things, even if you're not like leaving flowers there, but just going there and thinking about the storylines that you've been listening to for so long. People have been visiting Cornelia Street just in honor of the song even before they broke up anyways. So I think going there and just kind of feeling sad about how it's ending isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think the leaving flowers at the doorstep is debatable. Let me know what you think of that in the comments. Is it creepy or is it sweet? I'm kind of divided. But yeah, there's a lot of symbolism and motifs that we've gotten from this relationship, and I think there are definitely things you can do to kind of immerse yourself back into the story because of all the visuals we got from it through the lyrics. I'll go into that more later. I also wanted to read you some comments on this video that I think sum up how I've been feeling as well. What really gets me is the songs were not just "we're happy and in love," they were "everything bad in the past led me here. This is a forever love." The way she painted it, like they were soulmates destined to be, written in the stars, the two of them intertwined by an invisible string. It's the lyrics that are fucking me up, not the fact that they broke up. It's the idea that having the kind of relationship that she always wrote about is still a relationship that could break. I thought it was impenetrable. I did as well. Maybe I'm just naive, but based on how she wrote about it. Thank you. I feel sad personally because it felt like they both really treasure each other. All the songs she seemingly dedicated to him screams so much adoration, gratefulness, and this pure kind of love. It hurts and scares me that a love like that wears out with time in reality. And also, I only want the best for Taylor, so knowing that what seemed to be the best one for her didn't eventually work out is heartbreaking. Yeah, she wrote about it like it was everything she could ever want. I think people are also so sad because they connect with the anxiety expressed about finding someone who loves you for you. The thought of opening your heart up only for you to fall out of love is terrifying. And someone replied to them and said, and the thought that people can just fall apart like no mess, no drama, no big fight, just slowly losing the spark you once had over time. I don't think it's necessarily that they lost the spark. I think they did love each other deeply, at least up until the last few months of their relationship, just based about how she talked about him on Midnights. We'll go more into that later. You can skip ahead with the timestamp. I think they still had a spark. It's just that you can want completely different things out of life, and loving each other even so deeply and still being so attracted to each other and having that spark isn't enough either. And that's even more terrifying than just falling out of love and losing a spark. The fact that you kind of have to prioritize the way you want your life to go if it doesn't align with the other person. Ah, shit. Calling them characters feels a little insensitive, but I get your point. It also makes me sad because they made me believe that you can find true love just to break up. How can a person move on after 7 years of being together? She replied, they're characters in the sense that in first-person poetry, you call the I voice the speaker, not the writer, because we can't assume they're the same. As I said so many times, fiction and nonfiction have been very blurred in the stuff that Taylor writes. Another example would be Tolerated. She based it off the movie Rebecca, I believe. A lot of people have also kind of put their own characters into that storyline. I've seen people comparing it to Princess Diana. It applies to a lot of situations, and I do think at the heart of it is very fictional. But Taylor even said when she was explaining the song that she related to that feeling because she felt that at one point in her life. I think that feeling is tied back into the song Dear John and the experience that she wrote that one about. But I do think it was very dressed up and fictionalized, and she kind of put herself in the headspace of a character that she saw in a movie. Like, the lines have become very, very blurred over time. So I think it's becoming less and less insensitive. Like, Taylor used to be a very purely autobiographical songwriter, but at this point it's just so blurred and cinematic. And lastly, I got a really good comment on my last video where I vlogged my Eras tour experience. People were like, have you heard about this? Are you going to talk about this? People were kind of interested in a discussion. That's why I was kind of prompted to make this video, but I got a really good comment thread out of that one. The user, who is conveniently named Cornelia Street, said, it's interesting because obviously she doesn't owe any of us an explanation or anything, but I wonder what it means for her music going forward. Comparing older love songs to her love songs about Joe, there's a notable difference in the way she describes things. I wonder if that's a result of experiencing different emotions than previous relationships, or a natural progression of her writing skills. Judging from songs like The Great War and Afterglow and Hits Different, we know there's a wealth of fight/breakup related material to tap into. Obviously, it's sad for those of us who have followed their relationship, but ultimately it's personal and the only thing that matters is the art. I just hope she's happy and free to do what she wants to do creatively and career-wise, because it seems like the pacing and traveling of her career has picked up significantly when most of her relationship with Joe was very private and secluded, so it does seem like a natural transition. Hopefully she feels feels free to do what she aspires to. So this sentence, comparing older love songs to her love songs about Joe, there's a notable difference in the way she describes things. I think there is a very notable difference, but I think something that's kind of stayed consistent that we haven't really picked up on a whole lot is that Taylor herself has this idea in her music that it's okay to change your views about love. And when we look at the song 15, back then I swore I was going to marry him someday, but I realized some bigger dreams of mine. We didn't get to see a long-term occurrence at that point because it was only her second album and she was very young. She probably was in this situation where she thought she was going to marry this person for probably a few months because she was a teenager. Let's be real, we jump into things very quickly mentally as a teenager, but we didn't see her in that period of swearing you're going to marry someone for 6 years until this point, and then realizing bigger dreams of hers, I guess. Maybe this is kind of history repeating itself. She's changed her view on love already a couple of times, I think. I think the biggest shift has been between 1989 and Reputation when she met Joe. I think he's changed a lot of her perspectives. I will go into those. And I think we're about to see another shift because this ending is obviously something that's going to lead to a lot of self-reflection. Cornelia Street also said, in fairness, I think it's dismissive and belittling to attribute the changes in her lyrics to one relationship because you don't go from I can't help it if you look like an angel to you're a flashback in a film reel on the one screen in my town because of one experience of being with someone and learning a new way to love. Some of it is just time and experience, but her use of color is specifically interesting, how she most often uses blue and gold in reference to Joe and only him. So I was having a really good discussion with this person in this comment thread. I said, oh, I might have misinterpreted. I don't think she improved lyrically because of him. I think there are some concepts she explored, was introduced to, and even closed off some loose ends from her earlier career lyrically, and he inspired those, as well as the shaping of her idea of love and how she wrote about it. But yeah, I agree with you. She is the reason her lyrics exist. It's more like, I'm so happy she had such an amazing love to be inspired by and to learn what it is to be treated right to the point it changed her worldview. I don't think he's the reason she improved lyrically, if that might be what you're getting from me saying this right now. Unless you're talking about songs that he actually co-wrote with her, which is a very new thing for a Taylor Swift boyfriend. Of course, in that case, I'm sure he did sort of contribute to the quality of lyrics if he was actively contributing lyrics as her co-writer. But Taylor Swift is so good at writing songs and writing about love because she has done it for so long. She has worked at it. She's perfected her craft. But her experiences shape her morals and her perception of it. And obviously there are people who influence that greatly. I mean, the things that happen to you, we are all just some of all of the things that have ever happened to us. And not the quality of what she's writing, but the way she is writing, I think is what has been changing so much, if that makes sense. This person also talked about the drinking. She never really sang about alcohol or drinking before Reputation. And ever since, all the references to it have also been in reference to Joe, the dive bar. I think that was partially her growing up and maturing. I think her label was really fighting her on the kind of squeaky clean image she needed to have. I think they were really discouraging her from cussing in songs also. There was no way they would have let her include the line "fuck the patriarchy" back in 2012. I don't think that has anything to do with Joe, or I think Nothing New, it might have been shelved off of Red also because she said, I've had too much to drink tonight. I think that was just not something she was allowed to portray. And I think she had to really fight them on that and grow up a lot before Reputation. I mean, she took a 3-year break between 1989 and Reputation. I think she'd grown up a lot in that time space. I also think in terms of tying up loose ends, that still rings true and that it was a completely new chapter of her life and now we're on to the next. I love this so much. I'm so glad this person said this. It could actually be really, really cool to see her exploring the idea that romantic love is not an ending because a lot of artists and even herself really portray it that way. We see this so much in art. Even after she moved on from fairy tales, she kept ideas, like in Long Story Short, about ending up with someone. So even though she's not fantasizing this perfect fairy tale ending right off into the sunset and never have any problems again, because the plot is now over. But yeah, an ever after end to the story where the two people are together forever and ever. It'll be cool to see how her perspective changes, knowing she deserves that sort of equitable love and to be treated well, but being able to also go forth from that. That is just something that I didn't even consider writing into the script. That also kind of fucks me up a little bit. So much of these last 5 books, per se, have been focused on the concept of forever in a very palpable way. She could see it. She could like almost taste it. She was with this person for so many years and she thought it would just be like that forever. And I do firmly believe she will continue to believe that Joe is the one in a way, but also we could see her toying with the idea the one and forever could be mutually exclusive things. I don't think we see that hardly ever. Everyone talks about finality in finding the one, again and forever, it's gonna send me into a spiral. I've also seen a lot of people criticizing Swifties and telling us that we are projecting for believing that this would be a forever type of love. You are not projecting in thinking they were going to be together forever. That was very much the narrative in the songs. There was a noticeable shift. You were not crazy. Do not let anyone gaslight you. I mean, if you did see through it the whole time, good for you. But this video is for the hopeless romantic book talk girlies. We're coping today. We're going to be diving into the art that it was, the parts that read and felt like a book to me, basically. So now we're going to be really diving into some meat and potatoes of this video. My own interpretation and expectations of lyrical concepts from the past and also going forward, whatever books end up following Midnights. So Taylor doesn't owe us an explanation, and I don't even want one. I don't want an Instagram statement. I don't want her to talk about it in interviews if she doesn't want to. I want her to keep the greatest of luxuries, which is her secrets. I think she's always find it kind of tacky to be just putting it into conversational words. I don't think she's interested in the brashness that that entails. What's beautiful about writing about your experiences in songs is that it very much does feel like coping more than like spreading gossip or just talking to talk or giving people the scoop. And in an interview setting, it's really hard to kind of discuss that and not seem like that's what you're doing, unless you're discussing just the content of the songs and only revealing like bits and pieces. But I do think as a writer, I'm just very expectant of how she's going to close this chapter. I don't think it would make much sense to just jump into a new chapter of lyricism without concluding this love story in some way. Whether it's how it actually happened or not, as I said, we've really been blurring the line between fiction and reality for a while now. I want a conclusion to the characterized, romanticized version. I feel like I just read the last chapter in a 10-book series, and the couple that's been in the last 5 books, half of the series, just broke up, and I would like some kind of musical resolution, however she feels fit to do that. I'm confident she'll write about her realizations. I'm not rushing it though. I'm used to waiting for book installments. I can honestly say I've never been anticipating a Taylor Swift album so much until this happened, and now I'm like, God, TS11 is just gonna shock me in so many ways. And I think when Swifties attack each other for being excited about the next album, I think what they mean is if you're like, finally, we can have another burning red love. We're done with this boring, stable love song shit. She can go for shitheads again and give us these up and down roller coaster songs, the way I loved you type vibes. Or there are people who maybe really, really want a heartbreak album and they want her to hurt and kind of this suffering artist, painful, all too well type of thing. Or maybe they're like, okay, you've had your breakup. This is perfect material. Like, get in the studio. Where's the next album? I think that last one is like particularly dehumanizing because she needs to process things. She needs to process things to make good art, but also just to function as a human. I don't even care how long it takes. She's a human and she needs to process this and take time for herself and write about it in whatever capacity she's ready to, whenever she's ready. I just want to know what wisdom comes of this. Like, she could go in so many directions and make so many artistic conclusions. She has all of this to reference, particularly this. I'm confused and lost and I just want the guidance. She's been shaping my ideas and expectations about love since I was 8 years old. And now I feel like everything from the past 5 albums has all this potential retrospect. She might have all these potential revelations and I want to know, not the tea, I want the insight. What does this mean? What is the meaning of love? What is the meaning of life? How has this changed her worldview? I feel like Taylor is about to be super introspective and self-reflective and just drop straight wisdom on us. And I've never been in such anticipation over a Taylor Swift album because I feel like I'm going to learn some shit. Honey, life is just a classroom. I'm not interested in rushing her if she wants to get re-recordings done first. That could also give her a lot of insight into her past self and how she perceived love before Joe, or even with Reputation. The blind hope of the very beginning when you're almost a little bit delusional. You're so in love with someone and infatuated by them. I think it will just give her even more insight to draw from and a look at her past self if she finishes those re-recordings first. Speaking of re-recordings, I thought she would be re-recording Reputation with Joe still by her side. So I thought she would sound super in love. Looking back at the beginning of their relationship, knowing how far they've come, I've been thinking about that a lot since she was legally allowed to start working on it in November. remember, that's gonna hurt. I am one of the Swifties who is having a hard time listening to Lover and Rep in particular right now. They have a lot of nostalgia and memories for me and my own love life. It just hurts to know that a love that all-powerful sounding in those two albums can end. I didn't know them, but it's the art that's making me soft. The characterized version. Also, can we talk about how great marketing this would be for the next album? She's such a businesswoman and she looks to be in good shape, so I feel something brewing. Maybe not initially intentional, because at this point, anything that happens in her life generates interest. Any kind of milestone or change in her personal life generates so much interest for the art that she would create out of it. She just happens to rightfully capitalize on it. But this is a convenient coincidence. I think it will be a hell of an opportunity when she's ready to grab it. It's a huge shift in her artistic direction and the expectations that she's established in the last 5 albums. So it could be even bigger than Midnight's. I feel like we're gonna be so blindsided. We're gonna have whiplash from whatever work follows this. Now going more into specific concepts. So we have the line in Daylight, I once believed love would be burning red, but it's golden like daylight. Someone commented on one TikTok saying, okay, love's not red, it's not golden, I guess, so what color is it? I think it still is golden. I think that's a conclusion that she made back in the Lover era, based on her past work, that she's going to stick with. If it's meant to be, they'll find their way back to each other. But he taught her what it's supposed to be, regardless of how things end up for them. It was golden and it was real for 6 years. That was the most sustainable relationship she'd ever had. Like these red relationships she references from her past works, where she believed it would be burning red, those were like, what, 3-month-long relationships compared to 6.5 years? Obviously, golden is at least a lot closer to what it actually is than red. We're making some progress at least. Also, the line, I once believed love would be black and white, but it's golden. That hit me like a truck after the news broke. Black and white meaning all good or all bad. No nuance. And this was a perspective Taylor had very, very early in her career. I think maybe up until the Red era, because she used to villainize anyone who treated her badly so much. And then once Red came around, we got like the song Holy Ground, where she was able to look back fondly on something that didn't work out. Even if it was pretty negative and it was a red love, we were starting to get some nuance in these relationships. And I think her saying I once believed love would be black and white, or her saying not just that it's not all good or all bad, like relationships have up and downs. I think it can be interpreted now with this kind of mutual exclusive idea of the one and forever being separate things. Maybe it's not that someone is either a waste of time and not the one, or the one and therefore the person you will be with forever, but some great loves are still a success and can be considered the one even if they end. I firmly believe it was a successful relationship. An anti-hero. The line, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me, hits really hard after we thought about, oh, it's kind of funny because there was always that argument for so many years where people would say, oh my god, she has so many failed relationships, maybe she should write a song called I'm the Problem. And then she did that while she was in a relationship. I think, okay, look, I do firmly believe they loved each other all the way until the end. Even potentially now, they have a lot of love and respect for each other. I think maybe she had considered ending things before. A lot of the reports say they were going through rough patches at some points. Maybe she had considered ending things before. I think the construction of this song, and particularly this line, is written when she was thinking she might break up with him at any point in their relationship. And she wrote this because so many people still made jokes, despite her being in a 6-year-long relationship, that she should consider writing that I'm the Problem song. And if she was the one to end it, as reports say, this is her coming to terms with being ridiculed again for another failed relationship. And again, I think this relationship was successful. I really don't want her to listen to any criticism that this is some kind of failure again, and she's just so hard to be with. Most relationships end. That's just the reality of the situation. But I wouldn't say most relationships are even bad. I think it was a point of pride for so many of us Swifties when we would see those random 50-year-old men in like Facebook comments saying she can't keep a man, and we would always have that rebuttal of like, did you know she's been with the same man for 6 years? And that was very satisfying. And we, or she, doesn't have that as a rebuttal anymore. So she had a song just locked and loaded, ready to go, beating everyone to the punchline. In general, I see so much foreshadowing to this breakup. On Lover, there's so much fear and anxiety. The past few days, I've been really reconstructing my views on Lover, because when I heard it, like, I myself was in a very happy relationship, and I just kind of ignored all the fears and anxieties because I didn't relate to them too much. Like, this petrified fear of losing someone, is that healthy? Is that normal? Looking back on it now, I wonder, is that even that romantic of an album? Is it really just peak love, or is there a lot of fear and potentially rocky things and concepts inside of that album? She was so terrified on Lover that she would lose this love, and at that point, does it become like a self-fulfilling prophecy? I hope I never lose you, I hope it never ends, I'd never walk Cornelia Street again, that's the kind of heartbreak time could never mend. The entirety of Afterglow being so paranoid. Who could ever leave me, darling, but who could stay? Her just battling with fame and trying to preserve this love that she has. God, is it even possible for someone of her size? And lines like, one day I'll watch as you're leaving and life will lose all its meaning. Just this catastrophizing that she does when she sings about Joe sometimes. It almost feels like she manifested it. Like, for her to say, one day I'll watch as you're leaving, and for her to really picture herself never walking Cornelia Street again. Like, she was visualizing this breakup in a very manifesty way. Like, to see yourself going about your day and how that would feel. And then, of course, all of the forever lyrics that we have is just absolutely ridiculous. Don't read the last page, but I stay when it's harder, it's wronger, we're making mistakes. I want to teach you how forever feels. That's got to be really weird to release, like, right after they broke up or as they're breaking up, according to the timeline. My waves meet your shore ever and evermore. I'll never let you go, king of my heart. My drug is my baby, I'll be using for the rest of my life. I keep him forever like a vendetta. I want to brainwash you into loving me forever. All's well that ends well to end up with you. This kind of what that comment said, like the one and endings are tied together throughout her discography. The entirety of Invisible String. The line in Invisible String that I think is most interesting, even though it's all kind of like, you're the person I was tied to this entire time and we'll always be tied to each other kind of, but the line, cold was the steel of my axe to grind for the boys who broke my heart. Now I send their babies presents. It really contrasts with that interview where she was talking about Joe Jonas and she said, when I find that guy who's right for me, I'm not even going to be able to remember the guy who broke up with me over the phone in 15 seconds. When I was 18, Invisible String felt like the conclusion to things that she not even sang about but said verbally, and it's confusing for it to end. I need the next chapter. Also, everybody's observations of, you know, she used to write songs about guys and now she writes them with her guy. It felt like such a natural progression and conclusion to the amount of frogs that she kissed. Another point I have to make, those people who would ask her in interviews, what are you going to do if you ever get happy? And she found a way to make that work. You know, 2 albums into this relationship, on Lover she writes Death by a Thousand Cuts, thinking she would be happy forevermore. And she's trying to figure out this new way of writing about heartbreak that doesn't apply to her. And it felt like she was really working towards doing a fictionalized version because she truly believed that she would never experience that again. Which is nuts because there also are so many songs on Lover that's like manifesting it ending. And she even does it later on in Antihero after writing all these heartbreak songs that don't apply to her. One day I'll watch as you're leaving. That's so manifesty. And during the Lover era, I think it was, she was acknowledging those questions she used to get in interviews about how profitable her heartbreak was. And she talked about recently, I think it was with that interview with Paul McCartney, she said like she doesn't believe artists have to suffer. It felt like she was really closing that chapter of exploiting her pain and having to always have it to draw inspiration from. It felt like she'd moved on from that just to potentially get thrown back into it right now. So if you're not just feeling devastation but confusion, I think that makes sense. And before anyone mentions that she's written about forever before, I think of Stay, Stay, Stay. I'd like to hang out with you for my whole life. But then I googled her talking about Stay, Stay, Stay. She's explained it as being what she thinks a lasting relationship should look like. So it was kind of an idealized thing. I don't think it was based on anyone. As I said, I don't think there has been anyone other than Joe who she truly thought she would be with forever, and she had that idea for a very long time, to the point of like closing off any other possible avenue, because this is her first real long-term relationship. She'd obviously done a lot of thinking and not just drawing conclusions, but kind of jumping to conclusions that she had ended her red, tumultuous relationship era with finality. But you know what they say, the 30s are the new 20s, so is she gonna have another period of like, who fucking knows what, just chaos? So it's not just all of these tied up with a bow, loose ends, and conclusions from and out of her past work that this relationship inspired, but also this relationship gave us motifs, dive bars and pubs in London and the Lakes District and Cornelia Street. It's the setting of the story, and the color blue, and I know, firsthand, there is a lot in this world to be sad over. But I give you permission to feel sad about this story ending. I don't think it's any different over people who are sad over books or movies. You cannot tell me we are not allowed to feel sad over a relationship that literally gave us motifs. What other celebrity breakup can you say that about? Is Midnight's a breakup album? So I've seen this theory circulating and I'm going to give you some surface level thoughts. I think there are clues to some bumps in the road, but I don't think this is a breakup album. I think if we are getting a Joe breakup album, we haven't gotten it yet. As I said, there are probably conclusions she wants to make to that chapter, but she just hasn't made them yet. They hadn't broken up, and I don't think things were even that bad. Like the reports say that they were talking about marriage as recently as a few months ago. They weren't seen together at the Grammys after party, but they were both pictured in the same place, and she was wearing his jacket. That's not something you do with someone you feel like you're about to break up with. My main point here in that Midnight's is not really a breakup album is that the love songs are not now breakup songs, especially ones she's explicitly told us are love songs. Lavender Haze is a love song. People have been speculating the line staring at the ceiling with you is kind of detached and not intimate. I always thought that was a very intimate moment. I pictured them laying in bed together staring at the ceiling listening to music. There was that either interview or I think it was the Folklore Long Pond sessions where Taylor said Joe shares so much music with her that she's never heard of before, and it's all very interesting and stimulating for her. I pictured him showing her this playlist of songs that he encountered in the last however many days since they've talked about music, and he's just playing them for her and they're just laying in the bed staring at the ceiling. It also parallels what is a very obvious love song, Paris. We drew a map on your bedroom ceiling. So just kind of being imaginative together, potentially listening to music, creating their own escapism. A huge part of their relationship was so private, not just the Reputation years, but then the pandemic threw them into quarantine and they were probably with each other and only each other for a long time. So that's just how I've always pictured it. I don't think that changes because they broke up. Also, Taylor has a history of dating narcissists. There are people sometimes in a relationship who love to just fill up the silence with just a lot of this. Like, you don't have to poison every silent moment with just constant chatter. And Taylor also has always expressed wanting to experience a love that you can hear in the silence. You can hear it in the silence from You Were in Love. That was also something she'd never experienced before, and she was kind of idealizing and explaining what she thinks it is to be in love and what she's always been trying to put into words. Also, the line, "You don't really read into my melancholia." People are now thinking that means that he wasn't paying attention to her potentially being sad because of him. I think back to the line in I Knew You Were Trouble, pretends he doesn't know that he's the reason why you're drowning. To me, it felt like such a secure, stable relationship that when she got gloomy or moody, which she is bound to do when she's with someone for 6 years, she's gonna have ups and downs emotionally that have nothing to do with him. He doesn't take that shit personally. And to me, that is such a relief. It just seemed like such a relief of a line to me. He doesn't take her sadness over things unrelated to him as a personal thing. He just accepts her, especially when she was writing something like Folklore and Evermore, and she might have been down in the dumps during the pandemic, especially because her tour got canceled. That has nothing to do with him. And if she was like moping around the house or just seeming off, and he didn't think, what is it that I've done? Like, can you just talk to me? Can you just tell me what I did? Because he understood at the heart of it that that's not what it was about. And I've also felt like that in my life before. Me being sad doesn't mean you've done something wrong. If anything, it becomes annoying if someone's constantly asking me what they did to make me upset when I'm not upset because of you. Also, the line, "They're bringing up my history, but you weren't even listening." People think it's like, again, him being dismissive or not listening to her. To me, that line is said with like a smile and such relief. It's not that he's not listening to her. He's not listening to the scrutiny, to the rumors, to the bullshit the media spouts. It's really reminiscent of the lines, "My babies fly like a jet stream high above the whole scene," and "Here's to my baby, he ain't reading what they call me lately." This might be a sleepless night that is from that time period, but again, I don't think so, because people weren't expecting them to get married at that point, because they'd only been dating for like a year or two. Yeah, so just any criticisms of her, he doesn't take that and project that onto her and assume that the person he knows so well is who these headlines are talking about. Like, he knows who she is, and he doesn't learn who she is from headlines, if that makes sense. It's not that he's above her It's that he's above all the shit that she was afraid would matter to a romantic partner more than who she is as a person. I think that's just a recurring idea that her public reputation doesn't matter to him, and she loves that. Sweet Nothing is also a love song. It's a song she literally wrote with Joe. Her saying, "You never expected anything of me," in a world that is so demanding of her, is still a good thing, even if they broke up. I don't think it changes the meaning. I don't think any of the love songs mean anything other than what they meant originally. I also don't think he would be cool with co-writing a song that was a breakup song about him while they were still together. I don't know, it's kind of giving Stevie Nicks. Lavender Haze and Sweet Nothing are still love songs. However, there are some arguments I could see being made for some of the songs on Midnight's being about rockier situations, even if they came back from that just to like have another rocky situation like in January, February, and then end up breaking up finally. Glitch is vague. I could see some arguments being made for that one. The bridge is weird. Not gonna dive into that, but yeah, I've seen some theories about that one, and it's a little bit weird. I wouldn't call it a full-on love song. It's a little bit pessimistic in its tone. Midnight Rain has always been a breakup song, and I think theorizing that it's about Joe isn't changing the narrative of it or the meaning of it, so I could see an argument being made there. I could see an argument being made for Maroon, because that one was always really hard to pin down what the muse was for that. I do think at some point on TikTok, Taylor liked a TikTok where someone said that Maroon is about the same relationship that Red is about, so I guess it's kind of like the Jake character frozen in time back in 2012 and like A Sleepless Night from that period. But that still just sounds weird. I don't know. I don't have much of an opinion. Maybe it's about some rough patch her and Joe went through. Also, people have been asking questions about how someone could write a song like Question, obviously about Harry Styles, while they are supposedly in a happy relationship. And that is a very fair point. I always wondered how Joe felt about that. And I just always kind of came to the conclusion that he was just very secure in her writing about how she felt in the past, because it was Midnight's scattered throughout her life, so she could be referencing how she felt at another point. Also, re-recording the Vault songs, I think, does a lot to stir up old feelings. That doesn't necessarily mean she still wants to be with some of these people. She's just making art about how she used to feel. So I thought maybe he was just like very secure, which sounded nice and might have been wishful thinking. But then again, she's also referenced past feelings in fictional songs on Folklore and Evermore, and like the kind of Dear John, Tolerate It parallels, or even Would've, Could've, Should've, and nobody's really raising a red flag there. The Pain was Heaven. It's a little iffy, not as iffy as Question. I think Question is just kind of excessive, and I think that's where that speculation was always coming from since Midnight's was released. It's sampled out of the woods big time. Like, I feel like she's giving us an obvious Easter egg that this is the same muse and same relationship of tumultuous out of the woods anxiety. The bridge is also really something. Everything is just second best compared to this. That's bold. Some people think Bejeweled is about Joe now. To me, it still has heavy Calvin vibes. It's just so bitter, and I know she had a very hard time getting out of that relationship. She wanted to go dance around with Tom. We danced all night, and you can try to change my mind, but you might have to wait in line. I don't think Joe has it in him to be that controlling. Like, Calvin gives me like really big kind of potential asshole vibes, and Joe is just so quiet and introspective. I can't see him really forcing her to do anything. If he's unhappy with how she's living her life, I don't see him being bitter and trying to hold on to that. I see him just going somewhere else. Like, the personalities are so different, it still feels like a Calvin song to me. I also don't think she would write like that about someone she views with as much respect as she views Joe. I don't think she has much respect for Calvin, and I think she lost it a long time ago, even before they broke up. But yeah, I think speculating the songs like Bejeweled, which are obviously kind of bitter, or the songs that have always been breakup songs on Midnight's, it's interesting. I see the arguments people are making. The love songs are and always will be love songs though, and if you want me to do a Midnight's revisit in the future, I might. I just am not in the right headspace yet. I'm kind of sad about this and I want to reflect on it more. There are arguments to be made, there are things to dissect. I just don't think all of the arguments I've seen have validity. I don't think we need to pick apart the songs that are about her happiness and be like, I don't think she was really happy. I think she was. I think she truly was in a very real, happy relationship, and that can just not exist anymore going forward. But it existed in the past work. We even have a very explicit explanation of Lavender Haze on Taylor's Instagram. Snow on the Beach is obviously a feeling from early on in the Taylor-Joe relationship, and she's never lied to us about what a song is about. If she's upfront about it, it's always been the truth, and if she wants to be vague, what she does choose to carefully divulge is always honest. I still don't think that this is the breakup album that some people think it is, even if there is proof of some rumblings. And Midnight's isn't the last we've heard of this, or the conclusion at all, because in the Taylor Swift cinematic universe, this is a loose end. I think her first person narrative of songs just begs for closure. Naturally, she didn't really give us closure on the Calvin thing on Reputation for obvious reasons, but she did end up doing it later on Midnight's, High Infidelity, Bejeweled. We do get conclusions in the storyline at some point. And she has a habit, since probably Lover, of tying in ideas from older works and drawing new conclusions. We'll probably see a lot of references to her past 5 albums, in particular on TS11, and some growth from the first-person narrator that is Taylor Swift. We might even see some things we haven't heard referenced at all from Reputation and Lover, and we're just kind of left to move on to Folklore and Evermore, and I think she's going to bring some things back. I don't think it'll necessarily be a breakup album, especially if she's the one who ended things. In that case, it would be a lot of self-reflection and personal growth, more than like a heartbreak all too well kind of route. I would be happy with whatever way she concludes this. Call me basic, but she has never let me down before. Maybe this is why the Lover house burned down on the tour. Like, people think it's like a bitter thing to burn down their relationship, but to me, like, the house symbolizes the albums at this point more than the relationship. And obviously there were no more rooms for new albums, so she did have to kind of do something with that, and it's a conclusion she's making. And it's not because she's retiring. I think it's because it's a completely new worldview. Like, it'll be another Reputation style shift where it'll be something she's never done before, and we might get a new, not house because she never repeats things, but visual for the next however many albums. So while I don't think that a Joe breakup album exists, there are some lyrics, mostly on Lover, that clue into them taking time apart before, as the reports say they've done. I always thought False God was kind of shady, particularly daring you to leave me just so I can try and scare you. That's kind of fucked up. I mean, I like that she's kind of taking accountability for her potential to be toxic. Also, I can't talk to you when you're like this, staring out the window like I'm not your favorite town. I'm New York City. That's so obviously tumultuous. And then it's mostly lust that is getting them through these periods. As the song goes, the entirety of Afterglow, like pushing someone so hard to the limit and then being like, oh shit, I might lose you, and just completely backing off. The Great War, obviously there was something big at some point that almost completely broke them up. Did they actually break up? Like, did they really take serious time apart and consider this? Also, I remember in 2021 when I was analyzing the Evermore album and I said that the line, "the more that you say, the less I know," on Willow was kind of tumultuous sounding, because who is having these kinds of like cat and mouse miscommunications 3 years into a relationship? And I got comments saying like, oh, there's no way, they're perfect for each other. Even the line, "wreck my plans, that's my man," also didn't quite age well. If Taylor shows the spotlight over him, like, she seems in that line, if I'm interpreting it correctly now, she's very aware that she's like choosing him over potential more extreme stardom and fame. You know, if she realized after Lover that her career isn't actually over after she turned 30 and she has the choice to not settle down. I mean, it's not fair to make Jill wait in that case. But in this line, she sounds like she wouldn't be happy with him wrecking her plans, but no one wanted to hear my interpretation of that back in 2021. She has talked about Willow being like a love song and like a love spell song and trying to kind of make someone fall in love with you. And I think it is a love song, but it's got nuance for sure. I think there's something to be said about wreck my plans. Like, I will put everything else on the back burner. Wreck my plans sounds so sabotagey. Like, ruin my life, I'm obsessed with you, I don't even care if I can't achieve my dreams. It's a very cloudy-minded take. Also, Taylor did tell people at a Reputation secret session that she tried to break up with Joe to not subject him to the public scrutiny, and he refused. And that was a sweet thing that she was telling people, and he knew what he was signing up for, yes, but knowing and actually experiencing are two very different things. Like, no one can comprehend that level of fame until you're actually subjected to it, I think. So let's not jump the gun and villainize him, especially when we don't even have the full story in any capacity. Dancing with Our Hands Tied was written about this attempted breakup on Taylor's part, and she just might have been successful this time. You know, when something is very new and you haven't experienced this thing that your partner is trying to save you from in breaking up with you. Yeah, I think it's really easy to be like, oh, I'll be fine, when you've never actually experienced it. But I don't know, maybe it's another Dancing with Our Hands Tied moment. And after he had been subjected to that, he didn't fight her on it. And then the lines in Peace. This has been one of the most like devastating one for the Swifties. Maybe at a certain point it wasn't enough that she could never give him peace. And a lot of the lyrics in Peace are so desperate to give him anything else that she has control over. Give you my wild, give you a child, give you my wild. Like, give up being chaotic, give up being a superstar. Like, I will stop being just like Leo and Saint Tropez. I will never look at another man. I will have your children. I will do anything within my power, even if I can't give you peace. Like, I will give you everything else for you to stay. Just so much desperation. Was this everything she made it out to be? In some of the other songs that were like, you're the king of my heart, you're everything, I'd marry you with paper rings. If I ever lost you, I'd never walk Cornelia Street again. I think Swifties are getting their own retrospect. Maybe some of these things were marketed as, you know, peak love. That's kind of the marketing of Lover, but a lot of it is tumultuous. I don't want to say toxic, but definitely not the perfection it was kind of marketed to be. And maybe like the entirety of Peace was kind of said in a moment of desperation, and there was like clarity afterwards. Like, she felt that in this moment, but you know, when you back up and think about all the things you just said you were willing to give up for this person, maybe you consider, I don't know if I actually want to do that. Again, it's like the self-fulfilling prophecy where you just keep reinstating this question over and over again. Is it enough? Is it enough? So I've seen points that this storyline has the first person narrator, Taylor, really putting Joe on a pedestal. And yeah, he does look very great compared to like almost all of her exes, and she might not have been valuing herself because of that. She saw him as her knight in shining armor, come to save her when she was at her lowest, and how that dynamic might not be the healthiest to start a relationship off on. Maybe I'm delusional, but I never really noticed that until now, and just like hoped that wasn't true. Maybe if I did notice it, I was in denial. I mean, even in Call It What You Want, she says, you don't need to save me, but would you run away with me? And it parallels to a lot of her earlier works in like Fearless, where Romeo saved me, like just really submitting to being saved by someone and being okay with that. So Reputation is interesting because so often she tries to take this own autonomy over these outcomes, but saying something, you know, actions speak louder than words. She can insist to herself over and over again that she's not letting this guy save her, but then she actually has him be her savior. Voted most likely to run away with you on Miss Americana and The Heartbreak Prince also kind of parallels that Call It What You Want line. She was really trying to convince herself that this was her choice. Maybe she thought her career would be over after Lover. She talked about that in the Miss Americana documentary, and she was such a hopeless romantic that she convinced herself that that's what she wanted, and that's what she felt in the moment, and the songs were true in the moment. At that time, she wanted to run away and escape the public eye, and now we're at a new chapter. She misses sparkling. She's a mirror ball. She missed touring maybe more than she thought she would. Maybe she's a hopeless romantic, but just not a marriage girly. I've talked about this from my own perspective on my channel, and somebody even asked me, how can you be a hopeless romantic but not interested in marriage? And I think they can be mutually exclusive, just like the one and the concept of forever. Maybe she doesn't want to settle down and Joe did. If I'm right in any of these predictions, that would be crazy. I think we'll get a lyrical conclusion. And it's okay to want a lyrical conclusion. I don't think you're a piece of shit for being like, man, I can't wait to hear what she learns from this musically. And you can be sensitive about what she could be going through and not be like a piece of shit for just looking forward to what's to come, because this could be, as I said, an opportunity and the potential for something absolutely amazing. I would like to also conclude with this comment that I found on another video having to do with this breakup. It was left from another YouTuber. During my early YouTube days, I dated someone and made the mistake of being super public about everything. When we were together, I felt all this pressure, and when we broke up, I kept hearing how sad everyone was. They would say, but you were so perfect together. If you two don't make it, there's no hope for me. And this went on for years, and it made everything so much more painful when strangers projected their hopes or fears onto you. I literally cannot fathom how difficult it must be to experience that on the level that someone like Taylor Swift does. So let's not project our hopes and fears onto the people themselves and really limit it to the art. I think she will restore our hopes with her next project and give us the closure that we need with time. After idealizing what she wrote about for so long, love is not dead. There are so many examples in media or other celebrities who have been together even longer. I like the idea that it ended amicably, and I hope to God this doesn't turn into another circus like it did with Calvin Harris. I would like to see the idea of them being soulmates, at least as friends. Obviously, if there's too too many issues and that can't happen. I mean, these are real people. So yeah, the projecting of hopes and fears and everything. If it's meant to be, they'll end up together. She might be just choosing her career right now. Don't hold your breath though, because remember, we do not know these people. I think they still did love each other so deeply and it was real and alive, but they are at different points in their life and they want different things, and that's not something that is talked about in songs. Maybe Taylor will change that. That's a harsh reality of love. The spark may not fade, but your paths in life are different. If it's any consolation, James and Betty do in fact end up together. And if that steaming pile of shit can do it, so can we, so can Taylor. I think you can find your forever person. It's okay to be sad. I haven't cried yet. I might once we get new music about it at whatever point, and it's okay to cry. I'm just saying, like, to me, it's just been like, damn, that really happened. It's very surreal. I can't stop thinking over the lines she wrote about him and trying to rationalize how that could end. If you're sad the storyline is over, that's what I think is okay and what I'm getting at with the title of this video. It's okay to be sad or even devastated that the story is ending. If you are devastated or worried because you think Taylor is not okay because she's been singing about how not okay she would be if this were to happen for the past 5 albums now, keep in mind she's probably in the greatest place she could possibly be in while something like this happens. Her parents are around her at every show. She's seeing us every single night. And you can see on her face how much she loves doing this. Like, I was just at her show 2 weeks ago. She's happy with what she's doing. She's with her mom. I know her mom will support her and she would be honest with what she's feeling, at least with her mom. I know she's kind of been her therapist for many years. She's got the support right now. She's not getting canceled. She'll be okay. Don't get sucked into a hopeless delusion. Please take care of yourself. Don't let this ruin your week or disrupt what you need to get done. It's not worth something you have absolutely no control over and don't even know for sure. On the other hand though, I don't think it's helpful to be going to the other extreme. So many people online right now are like, she's glowing, this is amazing, best thing she could have done for herself. We don't know that either. We see her on stage and then we got a 5-second clip of her walking out of a restaurant. She explicitly said it's horrible to be famous before she performed the Lucky One on the Eras tour, and maybe it is horrible for certain aspects of her personal life, but ultimately it's what she wants for herself. It's what she's always dreamed about since she was a little kid, and that could just be bittersweet to her. She cried while performing Champagne Problems, whether it's because she got overwhelmed to finally be performing that song, or she relates to the character, or because she wrote it with Joe. That's gotta be difficult. That's not something she's ever had to do before. She has a great track record of separating the muses of the songs from the songs themselves, but having to separate a whole co-writer and kind of try to get past that has got to be difficult. To dismiss her 6-year relationship and act like she's so cold-hearted and has no emotions is probably not accurate or fair either, especially if it's because you didn't like Joe. That's projecting also. She wrote that this was real, and I'm sure she feels something. To say otherwise is weird. She'll update us lyrically when she's ready. That's always been the way that we catch up with her, and she's probably okay, just probably not doing better than she ever was. I am interested in hearing your lyrical interpretations or any conclusions you may be drawing, or cracks in the glass of this "I found my person and it's fate and love is golden, not red, and I finally matured as a person" narrative that you're picking up on now. Or maybe stuff you've always kind of known, like my interpretation of that Willow line that nobody wanted to hear about back in the day. Leave those all down in the comments. The art and the motifs and the storylines have always been the most interesting part to me, and I wouldn't give 2 shits if we didn't have that. So let's talk. Be nice to each other and to Taylor and Joe in the comments. We can discuss the characters that they are without dehumanizing the real people or being accusatory when our only proof is art. Lyrics. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, it is right here, and if you want to follow me on my TikTok, that is right here. I will see you all next week for a Lana Del Rey video that I was supposed to film today, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye guys.